Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your patience as we start this last session in the Global Competitiveness Forum. And I want to say that I'm very honored to be here once again this year to participate in this forum. It has become one of the events that marks the calendar in the world in the area of competitiveness. And every year it gets better. And I'd like to thank our host here in Saudi Arabia for their vision in putting on this event and in making it better and better each year and having these terrific people come and participate, and for all of you for being here. The purpose of this forum really is to inform the dialogue internationally on the issues of competitiveness. And this year, of course, one of the major themes of the forum has been on innovation. And so what I'd like to do in this last session is to see if I can't pull together what we know about the role of innovation in competitiveness. Because this is a challenge, this innovation challenge is a challenge facing many countries, and it's particularly a challenge facing countries that aspire to have a very high standard of living, that aspire to be advanced countries. We know that achieving truly an innovation-driven economy is very challenging, and very few nations actually achieve this goal. So what I'd like to do in this session in a few minutes is to tell you what I think we know about building an innovation economy. I'd like to talk a little bit about the progress that Saudi Arabia is making in this direction and make a few suggestions for ways to move in the future. But I think in order to discuss innovation, we really have to start by really understanding competitiveness. And of course, all of us are here at a conference to talk about competitiveness, but what I find is that there's still a lot of confusion about what we mean by competitiveness. And we all have to come with a common understanding of competitiveness if we are going to set good policies, if we are going to make good progress in enhancing the prosperity of our countries. Now, by competitiveness, I think it's now generally accepted by most thinkers that competitiveness is best understood in terms of the productivity with which a country or a nation can use its resources, its labor, its capital, and its natural endowments. If you're productive, you can support a high standard of living. You can have high wages. If you're not productive, then you're going to have to live with less and be less prosperous. Competitiveness equals productivity. And productivity must be the central goal that unifies all economic policy. We must be taking steps all the time that allow our economies to be more productive, to produce more value more efficiently for every day of work, for every dollar or real of capital invested. Now, what do we know about the causes of competitiveness? Well, if we pull together all the best thinking in academia and around the world about competitiveness, what we've come to understand is competitiveness is really fundamentally driven at three levels. At the base of competitiveness is the endowment of a country. The endowment is what you inherit: your natural resources, your physical location, your climate. An endowment produces some prosperity. And if you have an abundant endowment, you can be quite prosperous by endowment alone, as this country has demonstrated in its history. But endowment is not enough to be truly a high-income and advanced economy. There are other layers of competitiveness. The middle layer is what we call macroeconomic competitiveness. This has to do with certain framework conditions that create a foundation on which productivity can be built. Areas like human development, good education, health, a sound political institutional structure, government that works well, the rule of law, which allows commercial activity to be efficient, macroeconomic policies in terms of fiscal and monetary management, which create a stable platform on which productive enterprises can be built. But what we've come to understand more and more is that to be a truly prosperous country, you have to have another layer, and that's microeconomic competitiveness. And that has to do with the environment surrounding firms themselves, the private sector, and the public sector firms to the extent that public sector firms are present. And part of this, of course, is the capacity of the firms themselves. You can't have a competitive economy unless firms are competitive. But you need a good business environment. You need a business environment that has the right enabling conditions in terms of human resources, in terms of the right rules and policies that stimulate investment and so on. But you also need to have what we call clusters. Productivity is not built by isolated firms by themselves. Productivity emerges, and we know this more and more, from building concentrations of firms in particular fields where you can achieve critical mass and where you can create the right supporting institutions. As you see here, this is an example of an oil and gas cluster in Houston, Texas. Houston doesn't export very much oil anymore, but it exports a lot of knowledge. It exports a lot of technology, and it supports an enormously high wage and standard of living for those people working in this field. These three levels determine competitiveness. And what we know is that competitiveness is not only one or two things. Competitiveness is dozens and dozens of separate things that have to improve in order to improve the business environment, in terms of building the right clusters, in terms of creating the right stable platform. Competitiveness is a long race. It's not a short, fast race. It's a long, long race to put these conditions in place and keep building strength and improvement over time. And this is the journey, of course, that Saudi Arabia has been on, at least for the last 5 to 10 years and even more. Now, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in Saudi Arabia in terms of competitiveness. Again, most of you are very familiar with the basic story. You know, here's a country that was very blessed with endowment. Endowment is very good. That allowed the country to achieve a quite good level of prosperity some time ago. But what we know when we look at the data on Saudi Arabia is the problem has been productivity. Productivity, compared to many other countries, remains relatively low. And productivity growth has been relatively slow. Therefore, this has prevented the economy from really growing rapidly and improving the standard of living, despite the fact that the country has had a good endowment. Recognizing this, the leaders here, you, have understood that competitiveness must become a central obsession if the country is going to move beyond its past, move beyond its legacy, move beyond its endowments. And there's been a campaign now for some time to drive improvements in competitiveness. And I think the facts show that there's been a lot of progress. I've illustrated on this slide just some of the indicators drawn from the World Economic Forum's executive survey that indicate the degree of progress that this country has made on a variety of areas of great importance to competitiveness. If we turn to the microeconomic side, there's also been substantial progress. Of course, in particular, there's been an exciting progression in terms of the doing business indicators, which measure really the efficiency of doing business, the effectiveness of doing business on a grassroots level. And you can see the history of the rankings. And this has been the signature initiative here in Saudi Arabia, something I think you can be very proud of. In fact, what I've found now is other countries are copying